Well, welcome back to Two Pastors and a Mic. My name is Shannick.
And I'm Corey.
And we're so grateful that you're joining us today. Wherever you're listening from, we're so thankful for you. Matter of fact, we had 3 new reviews from this past week. They were encouraging.
So encouraging.
So thank you. We don't know who you are, but
because your name is weird.
Yeah, they're all super weird, but we're so thankful for that. Also, if you haven't done so already, like it, rate it, leave a review. It really helps, I think, get the podcast out there, as I feel like this is an incredible resource for people. Of course, we're the ones doing it.
I think it is too. Yeah, share
but
it in your
from what we've heard, it's been
too.
super encouraging, and it's encouraging to us as you let us know how this has impacted you, your life, and how you think. And so,
and if you haven't already, subscribe on YouTube, since you're now joining us in the room. You can see what we look like. Shout out to Era Sports, my man Braden, doing big things in Southern Indiana.
Yeah, so if you haven't seen an Era video, you need to go watch one because they're super cool, super well done. He ties in the sports theme with whatever sport it is, mostly in high school, some now college, and he's doing a good job on that.
Yeah, we love you. He's also in the room, so I love you, Braden.
Yeah, so Super Bowl was this past week. Just happened. And I think, didn't we both last week say that we're rooting for the Chiefs?
I think so. I can't remember what you said.
Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce
I definitely
fans.
said
I
Chiefs.
said the Chiefs too, so that's who I was rooting for. So they did win. They pulled it out. I'm interested to see that podcast we talked about with the Kelce brothers. What's going to happen?
New Heights
What's
is the
going to happen
podcast
this week? That's going to be fun. I'm sure there's a ton of stories
we say fun, but Jason's going to be devastated. He didn't win.
Oh, he will be, but they'll make it fun and funny.
We'll see.
But halftime show. The question of the week is, what did you think about it?
Spicy. I'm about to tick off all of your conservative Christian people. I thought it was fantastic. I love Rihanna, though. I forget how many jams she has.
Yeah. But as we talked earlier, you said you thought it was top 3, top 5.
Yeah, top 5 easy in my lifetime. And I'm only 35.
I thought it was good. I'm not going to put it in my top 5. The choreography was great. She has some great songs. I just felt it was good. It was a good show from my perspective. There wasn't any element or part where it was like, okay, taking it over the top. I mean,
she
the
had floating stages. What are you talking about?
That she was floating on was cool. Again, that isn't anything to do with her voice or something she's going to tie in with.
I know it's probably
a collaboration.
She lip sung, but she slayed.
It was good, but I think there's been so many good collaborations on the Super Bowl.
There have.
I was expecting a little something else.
So it's less about the performance and more the fact that she didn't bring some type of community into the.
She needed community.
Yeah.
It was a solo act.
I actually appreciate that.
Yeah,
because last year was awesome too with Eminem and Dre and 50 and
her all red outfit, fully clothed, but she was rocking it.
Hey, can we just appreciate that? Okay. I know I did talk with some Christian moms. They were a little offended by some of the dance moves. My opinion, get over it. But can we just celebrate a woman who just had a baby 8 months ago and was also pregnant and performed the way she did with actually clothes on?
Tying herself to a floating stage.
It could have been way worse. Can we just celebrate? Why are we always so full of hate and judgment?
Yeah.
And why do we hold people to a standard
that's our standard, not theirs?
Not even that we don't even meet that standard that we put on other people as a Christian community, and then we put people who don't have the same values in that same category, and it's just not fair, and it's not right, and
it's exactly the conversation I had. What was last week? The Grammys, the Oscars, whatever it was.
Oh yeah,
all these people coming out. I had the exact same conversation with several different people. Like, why do you care so much that that's what they're doing? They don't have the same type of standard that you might have. But then I love the fact you just brought up. People don't even reach that standard that they set, even for themselves, that they set for other people.
Here's another rant. Not only that, but then, I don't know if I'm going to go here. I'll go here. It's just like this. You make a couple comments, you have this judgment on people's actions, and then you post it. I'm not saying you can't have your judgments. Have your convictions. I'm all about convictions. But then when you publicly bash that, why would anybody who's not a part of the Christian community that you're a part of want to be a part of the Christian community you're a part of when they see how your judgments are towards the people that aren't a part of their Christian community?
Yep.
And rant.
Yeah. Drop mic.
It's
somebody needed to hear that today. Yeah. Do you have anything off the top of your head, like for the halftime show, like what your greatest show was?
The greatest show of all time
that you've seen?
Oh man. I'm probably gonna miss a ton off the top of my head. I'm a huge Justin Timberlake fan. I've actually seen Justin Timberlake live at the Yum Center, and his stage, the last act of his stage, the stage literally lifted and moved across to the other side. So
Is it
everybody,
Super Bowl or his actual show?
no, his actual show at the Yum
Okay.
Center. I said Yum Center.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then so I've seen that floating stage, and it was awesome. And Justin Timberlake's just my guy. Cry me a river,
Yeah,
you know.
it was really good. It was it last year or 2 years ago where all of the old hip hop artists came
That was
out?
last year.
That was last year.
Yeah.
I
That
enjoyed
was
it. I
awesome.
think just for the nostalgia piece.
A lot of
Um,
nostalgia.
Yeah, a top 5, dude. Katy Perry.
Katy
I will
Perry was up
say,
there for sure.
like the year and the few years surrounding when she did that halftime perform, there was like nobody bigger and doing it as good as she was, and she came out and absolutely slayed. I think way more than Rihanna last night,
Oh.
if I'm comparing.
It's a good debate.
But
How about they just were both awesome?
they were.
So
both
let's
good.
get in the
All right.
episode.
Here we go. So last week we addressed how we think. We talked about this grasshopper mentality, right? Our thoughts dictate our feelings, which then dictate our actions.
Mhm.
And so we started with our thoughts. Let's this week go into our feelings a little bit.
Two dudes talking about emotions and feelings.
Yeah, but it's also very important. The journey I've been on the last few years in TLP, which we've talked about a lot on this show about how it's really impacted me. And I thought signing up for this was a leadership program to teach me new things about leadership, when really 90% of it was about the mental and emotional health of a leader. And it's truly, over the last few years, as I have dove into not only my thought life, but tapping into my emotions, it's really changed my life. I think it's changed the way I just befriend people, I connect with people. I'm way more now mindful and patient with other people as they're going through things, because really when we talk about emotions, there are two main things we have to talk about. One, we have to learn how to allow ourselves time to feel. Especially as men, we don't do that. We dismiss our feelings. We instantly want to move on. So just allowing ourselves time. What are we feeling in this moment? And then asking the question, why are we feeling this? What is that triggering? Or like, what are the lights on the dash? Why are they going off? Like, what's the real problem behind these emotions? So taking time to process is super important. And that's with ourselves, but then even with other people, we have to also learn how to sit in the well with them. And when we talk about sitting in the well, we're talking about that place where some people might pull away. They might be in isolation, in solitude, or whatever it is, because of their feelings. They don't know how to express feelings to others, so they just handle all of those feelings internally. And when you come alongside and you recognize that, you're able to just sit in that well with them. And then I love what you added to it. It's not just sitting in the well with them, it's sitting there without a plan to get out. Because so many times, especially around this emotional conversation, when people have these emotions or feelings, whatever they might be, we think we want to come in and instantly fix them, fix what they're going through, solve a problem that they might not even know what that problem is. So we're offering a solution to something they haven't even thought through yet, which isn't always helpful. So that idea of getting in the well without a plan to get out, I love it, because one, you're giving yourself time, you're giving someone else time, and then you're just there, and you have to get to the place where they are open to ask for what they need. Like we talk a lot about on the show, like you don't want to just come in and give advice or give feedback if that's not what they're wanting. Some people just want you to just sit with them, to listen to them, to hear them out. And that might be all you do, but that might be enough.
Yeah.
So this conversation is super important.
Especially as pastors. One, we hear a lot of people's struggles and heartbreaking and worst moments. And there are far too many pastors that are offering advice unsolicited. And we can get in this thing where it's easy to fix other people's problems because we're not the one that are actually living in it. But most people don't really want advice. They want to feel heard, seen, and validated. And so sitting in that well, I love that language, is because that well, like you said, represents that darkness or that damp season of life where they're just in the pit, so to speak. And too many times we try to expedite that process to escape those feelings, because those feelings are hard to deal with and they're painful. And so what happens is we tend to sweep them under the rug and never actually deal with them. So they come out in sideways types of emotions like anger. And most men, because of our toxic masculinity, especially in American culture, is we just jump to anger when what we're oftentimes feeling is sadness.
Yep.
And we don't have that permission to cry because we think that that's weak. And actually, the exact opposite is happening is when you don't cry and you don't express your emotions, that's weakness. And so it's kind of crazy how our culture has kind of reversed that reality, because the best thing that I can offer the world is a well-tended and emotionally healthy spirit.
Wow.
And there's 3 levels of emotions. There's our, okay, what it is, the feelings. Then it's paying attention to those feelings. And then it's the ability to understand those feelings and why you're triggered and what you're actually going through. And a lot of it is going back to childhood trauma and allowing yourself that permission to feel all that pain, as hard as it is, so that you can get to the root issue of that circumstance or experience, so that you can overcome it, so it doesn't affect the people that you love the most.
Right. So that's like the 3 levels or 3 steps to the process of discovering like the importance of getting to like what this emotion is all about. So knowing there's motion, paying attention to those feelings, and then ability to understand those feelings, like that, asking why am I feeling this way? And that's what you're saying are the 3 levels of emotion.
That's the 3 progressive levels of emotion, because emotions are actually in your gut scientifically. That's why when you experience heartbreaking experiences in your life, like you can't eat, or that's why the opposite happens is people overeat, or the English phrase is you eat your feelings. It's because your emotions are in your gut. And so understanding scientifically why that is triggering and why that affects you the way that it does is really important to overcoming. Because again, feelings aren't bad. It's what you do when you're in those feelings that can determine whether or not something is good or bad. And so ultimately it's getting to a place of health, not dismissing your feelings, but allowing yourself that permission to sit in those feelings so it doesn't affect people in a long-term situation.
Yeah, I love that. And I love what you said, that the best thing someone can offer to the world, this is you, the listener, this is me, this is you, Corey. The best thing we can offer is a well-tended and emotionally healthy spirit.
Yeah.
I love that. And so as we go through this podcast, we're going to talk about ways that you can like get healthy. You can get emotionally healthy. And it starts with something and a question I think that you actually asked me, and it was crazy. Why don't you talk about it in your answer, and then I'll talk about mine.
Yeah. Shout out to Hannah Beasley. She always refers to me really good books. Anytime she sends a book, I read it, because I think her and I think a lot in this term, in this topic.
Think similarly?
Yeah. And it's from Brené Brown. It's her new book called Atlas of the Heart. And she asked this really good question. It's very thought-provoking. She says, what's the question? Okay, yeah. It's really important for me not to be perceived as fill in the blank. So it's really important for me not to be perceived as. And for me, it's kind of like a twofold answer. It's really important for me not to be perceived as lazy. And that goes back to, I talked about it on our family episode, I think 106.
With your brothers and their
my family experience,
perspective of you, and sometimes what they still have.
Yeah, they still have, because of something I was in middle school and high school that I was still developing. And so it's, if ever I'm not meeting a need or something like that, you're just lazy. And they project something on me that's not actually there. The most important one, though, is unintelligent. And I know you've challenged me a lot. I do have a lot of degrees, and I tend to tell people that in subconscious ways while I'm speaking, either on stage or even on this podcast.
Yeah.
And it's because it's really important for me to not be perceived as unintelligent, because when I speak on a topic, I want people to know that I'm not speaking on my feelings in the moment, that I have dissected this and studied it and thought about it and processed it and talked about it with multiple different perspectives. And when I land somewhere, I'm open to changing my mind if some better information comes. But I want people to know that, I've taken the time to study this topic out before I've talked on it.
And I remember challenging you on that. Yeah. And I think it wasn't just around your degrees and stuff, because you don't like post those up and have people look at them and stuff, but you say the phrase a lot. I've done a lot of study on this.
Yeah.
And that's your opening phrase to anything you want to say. And I was just challenging you that you've already, I don't know if earned the right is the right way to say it.
To a degree.
But people that know you already love you. They
Mhm.
know how much you put into teaching and getting to truth, and how much time you spent reading and developing. And so you don't necessarily always need that phrase.
I
I've
know.
done a lot of study on this, and here it is. And then you go out for the next 10
And
or 20 minutes unpacking it.
it's
Well, you
not
didn't need
typically
to
with.
put you studied it out.
I know, but it's not.
If you're saying it, I get that you put a lot
But
of
you
study
get
in
that
it.
because you know me. And when I say that, it's not to the people that know me because they know me. It's obviously it's to the people that don't know me that well. And it does come back to still insecurity in my
Yeah.
life that I'm dealing with and then I have to process through.
Yeah, because you don't want to be perceived as unintelligent.
Yeah.
So it makes sense
Because I've
why
been
you
dismissed.
put those disclaimers.
Several of my beliefs have shifted over the last 11 years. We've talked about a lot of them in past episodes, and I'll get labeled a specific thing
Yeah.
based on a specific topic that I know that person hasn't studied, because if they had studied, they'd be a little bit open to the
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
So,
Have a better conversation.
but
with
it
you.
is an insecurity of me of why do I care so much about other people that don't know me? Why do I care about their perception? Because it shouldn't dictate me that much, and I'm still in process with
Yeah.
that.
Well, we all are. I am as well.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, I remember this question from a while back when you asked it. I think you asked it to the team or something, but I had dismissed it. Sorry for dismissing you, and never really thought about it again. Right before this episode, before we started recording, you asked me again. It's really important for me not to be perceived as what? And I didn't know what to put. And as I sat for, it was several minutes, like just in silence, just really thinking. I finally came to the conclusion what I think for me, and again, this might change as I process this
Yeah.
question. And this is a good question for you, whoever's listening to this, to process for yourself. But I think it's really important for me not to be perceived as entitled. There's something with that really triggers me. It's also something that I do pick up on other people, and it really bothers me when other people are entitled. But there's something with this because I know I've been very blessed in my life. I've seen God's favor on my life from a young age. Things sometimes come naturally easy to me. I've worked really hard though in this place, especially like as pastor, to get to where I'm at, to have what I have. And those things weren't just given to me. And so sometimes people can look at my life and, oh, well, that's just because of this, or, and they think that I'm somehow entitled. It
Or
really,
these people and they bless you, so that's just because of your position or you haven't earned it.
right. Yeah. And so it really bothers me. And matter of fact, I'm just still processing this out, even as we're recording this episode. It's also the reason why I don't post that much on social media.
Mm-hmm.
I realize I do get to be a part of some pretty cool experiences in my life,
Yeah.
partly because of my position, but partly just because of who I am.
Mostly because
and
of your ability
the
to have good
relationships
relationships. Yeah.
that I really care about and that I devote a lot of time to. And some people can look at that as entitled, but it's the reason why I don't post, because I don't want to post about my recent experience in New York and put all the stuff out there. I had an amazing time the last 5 days, but I don't want people to look at me and think, oh, well, look at how much he gets to travel. Look at what he gets to do. It'd be nice if I had his job and all this other stuff. And they have no idea. But it's because also, like you were dismissed, I've had people say those things to me.
Yeah.
I've had people treat me different because I live in a parsonage. Oh, that's why you can do X, Y, and Z. And they just think that I was given all this stuff and that I'm just entitled now to do all this. It's just very triggering to me. And
hey,
so
let's have a session right after this.
yeah, we might need that. So I think for me, that's what I have to look at. Why does that trigger me so much? Why do I have a lot of emotion and feeling around that?
Heard.
Like I didn't
thanks
do
for sharing
something
that.
to deserve it.
Seriously.
Like it was just given. No, it wasn't.
Thanks for
Everything
sharing
that I had wasn't just given to me.
Because it matters, especially in our topic or in our position. Like you said, I struggle with that a little bit too. It's because so we get to go on some really cool vacations, but the awesome thing is we don't pay for them because both my parents and Julia's parents are super generous with providing us with really cool vacation spots. And I don't want to post because I don't want people to be like, oh, there they are just going to Florida again, or there they are, Northern Michigan, or all these things. And yeah, maybe I need to do some internal digging as well as why I get insecure even about that, because this perception of having nice things in the Christian world, especially as pastors, some people don't recognize that you'll never be poor enough for some people. The reality is, But because we've been disciplined in the area of finances, we do have the luxury of having some free vacations because of that. Yeah, I get it.
I think
get
for
it.
me, as I'm continuing to process it,
I'm processing
Yeah.
too, so that's
I
what.
think, and we can move on here in just a second. But for me, I think part of it too is because I'm a two wing 3 on the Enneagram. I'm a helper.
Mm-hmm.
I love to come alongside people. And I never want to be put in a position where I seem like unattainable or I seem unrelatable.
Yeah.
And so
That's
I don't
good.
know. I think that ties in a little
Yeah,
bit.
the answer to that specific question from Brené Brown is often what triggers shame. And then it's, okay, why are you shameful about that situation? We can probably go back to some childhood trauma or some experience you had in your past, and then unpacking that shame on why it affects you today so it no longer affects you. And I know Shauna Nyquist, she wrote the book Present Over Perfect, which was really helpful for me over the last couple of years about being more present. And she also asks really good questions. And two of her big questions are, do I bruise people with my fragmented, anxious presence? And that means, okay, there's something you have to address and deal with. And then, do I miss moments to connect with souls because of the drugs of efficiency, perfection, and accomplishments? And I know, obviously, as a 3, that spoke to me, because she even explained is what kills a soul: exhaustion, secret keeping, and image management. But what brings a soul back from the dead? Honesty, connection, and grace. And honestly, that's everything that we try to do in a culture setting at Hill City, is providing safe spaces for people to be honest and real, to connect and to receive grace, because there really is nothing that should cause shame in your life.
Yeah. And especially for me as a D personality, as a leader, it's very easy for me to have a tendency to put projects in front of people. And so I really have to guard against that. But that's exactly what she's saying here. Like, do you miss those moments of connection because of, and I love that she calls it the drug of efficiency,
They are drugs.
perfection, and accomplishment. And yeah, it's a drug because those things can get very addictive, and you accomplish something. How many times we talked on this podcast about, okay, we've had some cool things we accomplished, but it's never enough.
Yeah.
It's like this destination addiction.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we've done this, but what's next? What's next? What's next? What's next? And
didn't meet expectations, and you get disappointed.
Yeah, and we always search, and we're never able to be content and be happy in the moment. And I love what brings the soul back from the dead: honesty, connection, and grace. And I think a lot of times it's in that order. As you're open and honest and vulnerable about who you are, you're able to connect. And as you connect, people give you grace, but then because of your story, what you went through, you're able to give other people grace as well. And I think it's mutually beneficial in that relationship, and it does bring our souls back from the dead.
Yeah. Actually, since we just talked about that, let's stay here for a minute, because what we mean by sitting in the well is you, the listener, as you're processing what we just said, okay? Do I bruise people with my fragmented, anxious presence? And do I miss moments to connect with souls because of the drugs of efficiency, perfection, and accomplishments? This is something that you have to sit in the well with. Okay, it's not about just finding a quick answer to get over it or to move past what we just talked about. It's getting alone, getting in, figuratively, the well, and processing it. Okay, what are some things in my past that I actually have to deal with so they no longer affect the people that I love the most? And again, it's when you start doing, I'm just going to step ahead of myself. There are 2 warnings. Okay. I got to give you 2 warnings. And I give people these warnings in my counseling sessions with people. Here's what will happen when you start doing emotional work. There's two things. Number 1, emotional work never stops.
Yep.
So it can be very disheartening or discouraging when you start doing emotional work, because again, you'll start seeing trauma and pain and experiences, and they'll come to the surface, and that is uncomfortable for people. It's painful, obviously. And so again, the goal with dealing with emotional work isn't to overcome emotions. It's to be aware of them so they don't affect you for weeks. Again, when you start doing emotional work, it's not going to be like, oh, I'll never struggle with emotional work because I'll work on this for 6 months. No, you will still always deal with emotional work. It just won't affect you as long. So if somebody that you do relationship with triggers you, what used to take a week for you to get over now only takes a couple hours because you've been processing it. But that is still, it's kind of like one of those catch-22s, because it never stops, and you become more aware of it. And that's the second warning, is once you start doing emotional work, you will start to have judgments towards people who don't do emotional work, because you're going to be so aware of it, and you've done so much work, and you've dealt with so much trauma in your past. you'll be able to see, oh my gosh, that person's reacting not because of what was said, but there's something deeper going on. And you can form these judgments that aren't healthy. And so those are my two warnings.
Or they should do the work that I've been
yeah.
doing.
Or look at, exactly.
Look at how good I've been doing with all my emotional health. And they really need, especially the people that might have caused trauma on someone else.
Exactly.
Whenever the victim or the person that they caused trauma on is getting healthy emotionally and they're doing all the work, then they want to instantly, okay, they're not doing any work on themselves and they want to cast judgment. And I get it. But even the first thing, it never stops. That's so true. I remember going through the TL program. It was a 1-year program, and then we get to the end. Oh no, it's another year, second year. Oh, we actually offer a third year, and so I went through it 2 years on my own, then took the team through it for a third year, and then now we're honestly on my 4th year doing it, and I feel like it's something that's never going to stop. Things always either come to the surface, or you're always having an experience or processing through something where you need those, I'll call them tune-ups.
Yeah.
Right? Like you said, it's not like maybe main mechanical problems, if that's the analogy we're going to use, where your vehicle's in the shop for weeks or a month on end, but little tune-ups, little oil changes,
But from my perspective, I would say you are a drastically different person, friend, and leader to be around since you've done the work. And that's like the goal is, yes, the work never stops, and most of the time it sucks. It's not pretty. I don't want to make this glamorous. Emotional work is not glamorous.
It's not.
But you definitely, how you process, you get to a quicker end goal, so to speak, faster than you used to. And you can maybe speak to that, but from my perspective, I think it's been one of the best things ever.
No, absolutely. I think with mine and your relationship, though, you're still the one that sits in the well with me. And so I might not always be the completely different leader, friend, all the things that you mentioned.
That's okay.
Because you're the one who still hears all of my stuff.
But I've also been trained to do it. So, which goes back,
but it never stops. Yeah.
We'll close the episode with this is what we're working on and what we're calling is actually a scientific thing. It's called cognitive behavioral therapy interventions. It's called CBTI. And really, I've kind of labeled these down into 5 areas myself. It's just becoming aware. And so this is something for you, the listener, but it's also if you're going to do counseling for other people, which you don't need a degree to sit in the well with people, is you have to help bring people back to the present situation. So become aware of the emotions, bring the person back to identity. So bring them back to, hey, your identity is that you're the fullness of Christ. You've never been broken. You have brokenness in your life, but you are always full. You're accepted, valued. Mm-hmm. You belong. You're righteous, peace, and joy. The kingdom, what we talk about.
You start there, and then you catch up to that.
And then you catch up. So awareness, bring them back to identity. You never accommodate a fear. So like panic and anxiety, you have to address that. That's the only thing that you're going to be aggressive with when you're sitting well with somebody is you don't accommodate a fear or a panic.
What do you mean by don't accommodate? Like don't listen to it or overcome it with truth? Like just not even, are we talking like dismissing it? Like that fear isn't real?
No, that's not what I mean by that. When you don't accommodate a fear, like, so one of the things is they talk about in this kind of work is that like panic isn't organic. And so anxiety primes the pump for panic.
Okay.
So if someone starts to get anxious, you have to recognize, they break them down to 3 things. Recognize the difference between anxiety, fear, and worry. And those, I'm just going to read this for you real quick. Anxiety is about a future-oriented emotion that involves thoughts of uncontrollability and unpredictability for future events. Fear, real fear is actually like a present danger, like there's a real threat here. And then worry is just the futile attempt at problem solving. In other words, worry is the byproduct of anxiety or your attempt to manage your anxiety that doesn't work. And there's some practical steps. Tony Robbins has like, go take a cold shower real quick if you're feeling anxious. Obviously, you can't do that in a counseling session, but it's helping people with the right verbiage to not be like, okay, that is, you're panicking.
To lower that threat right now.
Lower the threat.
In the moment, the fear that's in the moment that you said, so that you can address the reasons why for the anxiety or the worry.
Usually when people are in this state of mind, they're not in their right state of mind, although you can't really say that in a counseling session because then they'll be on the defense. But it's like, oh, okay, hold on. Like, let's refrain here. Let's rethink what's going on here. You're panicking. Obviously, you do different language. I don't know how it changes depending on the person and the demeanor.
It's the experience. Got it.
For real. And then it's recognizing that healing doesn't happen in a straight line. So what works for one person might not work for another. And healing is time. What might take you 6 months to overcome might take somebody else 3 years, might take someone else 1 weekend.
Yeah.
It just depends.
And it can be a roller coaster. It can be upside down. It can go backwards. It's
Yep.
not linear, and it's not always like
Yeah.
our health is always a straight line going in like
Yeah.
an increase of health over time.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's
Yeah. And it's
Do you like
even
those
using
sound
this. I do.
effects?
It's it's not putting an expectation on somebody and then telling them, look, I don't have an expectation here. Like, we can go as slow or as fast as you want to go. But oftentimes sitting in the well is not trying to fix their problems. It's just letting them know that they've been seen, heard, and valued. And then the last one is recognizing what we've been talking about this whole episode, especially with dealing with other people, is growth truly happens in safety. And so, are you a safe person? Do you create that safety because you're full of grace and not judgment? And we actually did a whole episode on this, episode 68. I really think it's one of our best ones, where we address the reality that it's okay to not be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And we gave people the P's of process. The 4 P's of process is: you have permission to feel, you need to pry the why, you need to periscope your perspective, and then paint with people.
Oh.
And we explain all of
Now
those.
that you're saying that, I remember that episode.
Yeah, episode 68. Go back and check it out. It's okay to not be okay. We go into a greater deal of how to actually deal with that specific emotional for each individual one. But
Yeah. No, I love it. I think at the end of the day, what we both would agree on, as we're setting with other people in our emotion, or even setting in the well ourselves, and people want to feel heard, seen, and validated.
that's it.
At the end of the day, that's it.
Yep. So maybe you should stop talking, and maybe we'll stop talking right now and give you permission to feel heard, seen, and validated. Go sit in the well with somebody without a plan to get out.
Yeah, and if this episode blessed you at all, or if you think this would be a great resource for someone else, why don't you go ahead and share it with them, have a conversation about it, and just know, above all else, you are loved, and there's nothing you can do about it.